7425. It is pretty much at or around or below freezing everywhere in the state right now. 30 degrees in Rome, Valdosta in the mid 40s, and Dalton is at 30 degrees, Jasper 34. Here in Macon, it is 41 degrees, and welcome to WMAC in Macon, Georgia, our newest affiliate. Impeachment has begun. They are debating it in the House Judiciary Committee. It is a foregone conclusion. Articles of impeachment will be put forward by the Democrats, but there is a problem in the overall Democratic conference. This morning, CNN had the scoop.
Moment is bigger than the muddle here. We have learned that as soon as next Tuesday, the full House will vote to impeach the president. They're fully expected to have the votes, though we're getting new reporting this morning that a handful, maybe a growing handful, of Democrats could be getting cold feet.
Handful of Democrats could be getting cold feet. Why? Well, there's been more and more impeachment coming out, and the impeachment data from the polling shows that it's not working for Democrats in swing districts. Quinnipiac, for example, has freaked out Democrats. Quinnipiac, let me go off on a tangent here for a moment. Academic polling tends not to be very good. For example, here in Georgia, a number of news outlets rely on the University of Georgia's polling. And no disrespect intended, but academic institutional polling tends not to be great. Emerson College is routinely ridiculed by the media because its methodology isn't great. Look at the AJC poll that had Brian Kemp at a 54% approval rating. That was the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. The polling was conducted by the University of Georgia. What do we know about the poll model? Well, the poll model that had Brian Kemp at 54% of the vote oversampled people with graduate degrees and oversampled young people. In the actual election here in Georgia, Donald Trump got a higher percentage of the vote than Hillary Clinton. In the AJC polling conducted by the University of Georgia, I think Donald Trump got the state, 51% of the vote, 48% of the vote, somewhere in there. In the UGA poll, he got 41% of the vote, which is just a statistical flaw there. Hillary Clinton roughly matched her voter turnout with the UGA poll, and Donald Trump was decidedly declined. And listen, yeah, I realize that you may have Trump voters who refuse to participate. Often, Republican voters are harder to get on the phone. But the methodology was bad. That polling actually suggests Brian Kemp probably has a 60% approval rating in the state. But it's a university poll, and university polling conducted by students who are trying to learn how to do surveys and polling and statistical sampling. Listen, it's great for the education of students. It's bad for the education of the public. Quinnipiac, however, has a track record, and Quinnipiac has a long history of doing very accurate polling. Monmouth University increasingly has a good polling track record. You can look at where these pollsters are and see their track record and determine whether or not they figured out a competent methodology. And Quinnipiac is the best university poll you will find in the country. It is not always right. No polling is ever always right because of the way polls are conducted. But you can certainly look at the trend lines and see where things are. And what is remarkable about the Quinnipiac polling is that a couple of months ago, a majority of voters wanted the president impeached, and now a majority of voters think they should let the voters decide. And in fact, according to Quinnipiac, voters would turn Donald Trump out of office, but they want the voters to be able to do this. Now, you should know in that polling that a majority of voters want to turn Donald Trump out of office. In the Quinnipiac polling in December of 2015, Hillary Clinton was beating Donald Trump. So there's that as well. Keep that in mind. But we do have a good trend line considering polling biases. And this was a nationwide poll of registered voters, which skews towards the Democrats. That majority of voters, 51%, do not believe the president should be removed from office by Congress. That's pretty telling for the Democrats of where they're headed. They got problems here, and they know it. They genuinely know it. Here's Chuck Todd on MSNBC yesterday.
President Trump at a rally in Pennsylvania last night, trying to show strength there. My panel is back. I'm also joined by one of our NBC reporters, Heidi Presbella. So, Heidi, let me quickly start with you. You know, The president has decided to wrap his arms around the impeachment as a campaign tactic. The campaign has used it, I think, quite effectively when it comes to raising money and things like that. Look, the polling, he's not adding any new people, but he certainly is increasing the intensity of his support. It kind of feels like that they have fought this to a political draw.
He has fought it to a political draw. When you got Quinnipiac coming online and other polling out there as well, showing that particularly in swing districts, Democrats aren't doing well with the polling right now. That impacts Georgia because Lucy McBath is in the 6th Congressional District here in Georgia, and the polling in the 6th Congressional District is not good. It looks like a majority of voters in the 6th Congressional District do not want impeachment. Same in the 7th. The 7th is a Republican district here in Georgia, the Gwinnett County area outside suburban Atlanta, northeast suburbs of Atlanta. The 7th Congressional District is Rob Woodall's district. It was John Linder as Rob Woodall. Demographically, it has shifted, and in that district, majority of residents don't want impeachment. That's going to hurt the Democrats. That district, Woodall barely won it just by a few hundred votes. And it has shifted. Here's Matt Gaetz yesterday as the Democrats began to formally debate impeachment in the House Judiciary Committee.
This is the quickest, thinnest, weakest, most partisan impeachment in all of American presidential history. And for all the radical left's attacks on the president's honesty, it's their lies that continue to fuel this scorched earth strategy of impeachment. When a member of this committee said that President Trump was an agent of the Russian government engaged in a criminal conspiracy with the Russians, he lied. Needing a new way to undermine our president, the Democrats said he obstructed justice. But they couldn't make the case. They didn't have the facts. And there are no obstruction of justice articles in this impeachment. So needing another new distraction, Chairman Schiff announced a whistleblower. He said we'd hear from this person about bad presidential conduct. Some in the media reported on the whistleblower, raising serious concerns about political bias, improper motivation, and scandalous coordination with a political hit job aligned with none other than the operatives of Chairman Adam Schiff. With public opinion turning against impeachment, the Democrats scurried to assemble focus groups and commission polls. They learned that accusing the president of bribery would be good politics. While Democrat House members are willing to follow the pundits and consultants, the evidence and the witnesses were not. Even their seemingly most anti-Trump witness, Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, said, "I was never involved in anything that I would consider bribery or extortion." Lo and behold, there are now no bribery articles in this impeachment. Another lie. But the biggest lie of all was that House Democrats would not put our beautiful nation through a partisan impeachment. Speaker Pelosi said there must be evidence that is compelling and bipartisan. Chairman Nadler said impeachment should not be partisan. And tonight, they stubbornly defy the standard that they set for themselves.
He's got a point. I'm not a Matt Gaetz fan, but he's got a point. We've spent a lot of time with the Democrats arguing first quid pro quo, then bribery, then suggesting extortion, and none of that stuff is in the articles of impeachment. None of that's in the articles of impeachment. Now, I gotta truly believe and think that if the Democrats thought they had a case there, they would put it in articles of impeachment, and none of that stuff is there. And that just suggests to me that they don't actually have any of that stuff. I mean, here is Nancy Pelosi from back in November.
Does the president get, as he says, to confront his accuser or get due process?
What do you mean confront his accuser? Confront the whistleblower?
Presumably.
Well, I will make sure he does not intimidate the whistleblower. So the president could come right before the committee and speak all the truth that he wants if he
You
wants
don't
to.
expect him
if
to
he
do
wants
that.
to take the oath of office, or he could do it in writing. He has every opportunity to present his case. But it's really a sad thing. I mean, what the president did was so much worse than even what Richard Nixon did.
There's no quid pro quo. There's no bribery. There's no extortion. There's no breaking into someone's political office. There's not even a successful completion of what the Democrats accuse him of. But it was worse than impeachment. And wait. There's also this from November 15th with Nancy Pelosi.
You talked about bribery a second ago.
Yes, bribery.
That's a very serious charge.
It's in the
What
Constitution.
is bribery?
Well, you know, we talking Latin around here, e pluribus unum from anyone, quid pro quo, bribery, and that is in the Constitution attached to the impeachment proceedings.
So what was the bribe here?
The bribe is to grant or withhold military assistance in return for a public statement of a fake investigation into the elections.
So could we
That's
be looking at-
bribery. Yes.
Could we be looking at an article of impeachment?
Well, I don't know about that. We haven't even made a decision to impeach. That's what the inquiry is about. And when the committees decide that, and they will decide what the articles are. But I am saying that what is the president has admitted to and says it's perfect, I said it's perfectly wrong. It's bribery.
It's bribery. We don't know that they're going to be in the articles of impeachment. We don't even know we're going to impeach, but it's bribery, and he's going to be impeached for bribery. And he then wasn't impeached for bribery. John Radcliffe of Texas.
I'd like to say you can't make this stuff up, but it is all made up. I got to concede, though, to my colleagues, y'all move fast. The day after we watched the Russian conspiracy and obstruction of justice claims from the special counsel go down like the Hindenburg, the next frame job started with a phone call where the only two people on the call both said it was a great call and none of the things that the Democrats alleged happened. But I'll admit, this time, it's hard to blame some of my colleagues on this committee for doing too much this time around. I concede that because the once respected House Judiciary Committee with jurisdiction over the Constitution and impeachment was humiliatingly excluded until the bitter end from participating at all in matters involving the Constitution and impeachment. 1 week. History will reflect that the House Judiciary Committee's involvement in the impeachment of President Donald J. Trump started with a hearing on Wednesday, December 4th, and ended with a markup that started 7 days later on Wednesday, December 11th. How does that sound for fairness? How does that sound for due process? The founders warned and feared that today might come. Alexander Hamilton said the greatest danger of impeachment would be depriving a president of due process. The greatest danger, Hamilton said, would be if impeachment was used politically by a party that had the most votes in the House, instead of being used on the basis of guilt or innocence for specified crimes under the Constitution. And today, the Committee of Jurisdiction, after only 1 week, is marking up a bill to impeach a president for crimes that aren't specified under the Constitution by the party that has the most votes in the House and pledged to impeach him from the first day of his presidency. Today's Democrats are the founders' worst nightmare come true.
The worst nightmare come true. You know, the founders did worry about impeachment becoming a partisan tool of the majority. Well, in fairness, we need to give the Democrats their say. Here is Representative Cicilline accusing the president of trying to cheat.
I have to admit, I think the president's distractions are working, because most folks are probably sitting at home thinking, what in the world has any of this got to do with me? How does stopping foreign aid to Ukraine actually affect my life? That's why with my time, I want to take a step back and remind everybody in this body and everyone watching at home what this is really about. President Donald J. Trump wielded the enormous powers of the presidency to cheat in the 2020 election. Specifically, he used our nation's leverage over an ally, undermining our national security, to try to smear the opponent he feared most in the general election. That wasn't an attack on Vice President Biden. It was an attack on our democracy. And if we don't hold the president accountable for it, we will set a catastrophic precedent. Anytime a future president is afraid of losing re-election, they'll feel entitled to do whatever it takes to win, even if they have to abuse their power to do it. If we set that precedent, if we decide the president is above the law, then we will no longer live in a democracy. We will live in a dictatorship, trading the values of Madison for the values of Moscow.
Listen, I don't think the president should have done what he did. I think it was dumb of him to do what he did, frankly. But I don't think it was cheating. And the Democrats, I have a hard time now taking the Democrats seriously on their allegations of cheating because Adam Schiff has already embraced the talking point that the president cheated in 2016 by coordinating with the Russians, which has been thoroughly debunked. And if we've got Democrats whose presuppositions are based on a lie, I don't know that we can take them seriously going down this road. I got concerns about the president's behavior. But, you know, just because something is bad doesn't mean it's impeachable. I think President Bush was bad for trying to put Harriet Miers on the Supreme Court, but it wasn't impeachable. I don't think the president's phone call with Zelensky was either.
Want to be on the show? Call Eric now.
I have a take on impeachment that just makes everybody mad on the left and the right, and I think I'm right. You know, when I was a political consultant and ran campaigns, I would tell candidates to running for office that they needed to be careful. They needed to know when they were in the minority, even when they thought they were right, even when they thought they should be in the majority. They needed to understand when they were often not, and they needed to be careful how they dealt with it. I'm used to making everybody mad, so I'm just going to tell you, I think what the president did on the phone call with President Zelensky was stupid. It was dumb. It was bad. He knew that there were people inside the White House who were out to get him, and including this whistleblower who was complaining about everything. And he should have never brought up Joe Biden and Hunter Biden on this phone call. The president listened to Rudy Giuliani and believed this CrowdStrike nonsense, and it is nonsense, by the way. The idea that there was a physical computer hard drive in Ukraine with all of the DNC information, and the Ukrainians were hacking it, feeding information, putting information on it, and nonsense. That is completely contradictory to the way the internet and CrowdStrike work. These servers are spread all over the world. Some of them happen to be in Ukraine. It's a nonsensical conspiracy by a bunch of blue-haired geriatric pundits on the late-night shows on Fox News that Rudy Giuliani believed and convinced the president to believe. And if anything, the president is getting impeached because he believed a bunch of geriatric idiots overnight on Fox News who don't even know how to turn on a computer, let alone program a VCR or a DVD player or watch an Apple TV or get on Netflix. And yet somehow they knew how the server farm worked in Ukraine because they're experts. He's getting impeached for believing a bunch of idiots on late night Fox shows. That's why the president's getting impeached. He should have never brought up Joe Biden. He should have never brought up Hunter Biden. The reality, however, is that the Ukraine government is terribly corrupt, and it was entirely plausible that Ukrainians sucking up to Hillary Clinton and others were problematic. There was a Politico story from December of 2016 how Ukraine tried to help Hillary Clinton. The president had a rational basis for believing there was corruption, and he had a rational basis at a time that others had convinced him that the FBI was out to get him. And by the way, we'll get to the IG report. It looks like there were FBI agents out to get him. He had a rational basis for wanting to look into this stuff to figure out how the Democrats were going to be out to get him, including Joe Biden. He shouldn't have done it. It was a dumb thing for him to do, but he had a reasonable, rational basis for wanting to do it. And what happened? He gave Ukraine the money, and Ukraine never did the investigation. So I don't know why we're here. There's my hot take to make everyone mad on impeachment. It was a stupid thing for him to do.
30.
He did it, though, because he had a reasonable basis. His reasonable basis, though, was formed by a bunch of idiots on Fox News who didn't know what they were talking about in the late night hours, a bunch of geriatrics who don't even know how to use the internet. But he had a reasonable basis for doing so based on watching the news. If anything, maybe some bad pundits at Fox should be impeached, but not the president. It's silly to do this. Just let the voters decide. The phone number here, yes, it is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. If you want to call in, you feel free to. If you want to weigh in on impeachment, happy to take your phone calls. I'm a little bit distracted. I've got the story pulled up on my screen, and I was going to save it for later, but it just, every time I turn my head and look at my screen, it just aggravates me. I am sorry. I am not going to call SunTrust Park Truist Park. I don't know what they're going to name it. And if anything, I want to be vocal about it now, so maybe they can actually come to their senses and call it Hank Aaron Park. Even if they call it Hank Aaron Park and put under it sponsored by Truist Bank or some such. But name it after Hank Aaron, name it after Bobby Cox, name it Chipper Jones Park. I don't care, but Truist is a stupid corporate PR focus group name. It's just dumb. Some of you may be having no idea what I'm talking about. Truist is, so SunTrust, the bank, used to be Trust Company, then it bought somebody and became SunTrust. It is a nationally known brand. It is being bought by BB&T. And they don't want to keep the SunTrust name because it's BB&T buying SunTrust. They don't want to keep the BB&T name because BB&T isn't that great of a national brand. So they've decided to use a corporate speak word designed by, I'm sure they paid some company millions of dollars for rebranding, and the rebranding name is Truist, not Truett. The Truist, not the truest thing, Truist, Truist. It's a truthy bank. You can believe us, just don't read the fine print, is what the word essentially says. So, I mean, truth in advertising, I guess. It's not quite true, but it's kind of truthy. The whole thing is just stupid. There are a couple of ad branding agencies out there that are living on 50-year-old impeccable reputations and have done just some of the stupidest ad branding work in the past couple of years. And this, Truist, is one of the names. Well, we got a problem because SunTrust bought naming rights to the park where the Braves play. And they refer to the Braves Stadium as SunTrust Park. Now, I try not to call it Turner Field. But I still sometimes make the mistake of calling it Turner Field or the Brave Stadium. I don't think I have ever called it SunTrust Park. It is the Brave Stadium. Truist Park. It is the truest park in the nation. You know, the last time, what was it? Was it Nationwide or Nationside or not Nations Bank, or one of them changed their name to Mr. Cooper. I think it was Nationwide. I can't remember, but they changed their name to Mr. Cooper. All right, hang on a second. Now this is going to kill me. Mr. Cooper. Nation Star. That was it. Nation Star. I started getting mail from Mr. Cooper wanting my money. I thought, who the hell is Mr. Cooper? And why does he want my money? And apparently, Nation Star Mortgage decided to change their name to Mr. Cooper. I have no idea why they decided to change their name to Mr. Cooper. They should have they should have fired their branding agency instead of doing something like that. Mr. Cooper was a black teacher on ABC TV in the 1980s and 90s, I think, when I was growing up, and he was an awesome guy. I loved Mr. Cooper, but that Mr. Cooper does not want my money. I don't understand why financial institutions are doing this stupid stuff. But they apparently are, and they're going to, I guess, change SunTrust Park to something, and I'm sure if the best the geniuses could do to merge BB&T and SunTrust is to come up with Truist Park or Truist Bank, then I'm sure they're going to come up with Truist Park. And I will never call it that in the same way I've never called it SunTrust Park. It is Hank Aaron Park. That's what I will refer to it as. Hank Aaron Field, or a Bobby Cox Field at Hank Aaron Park. How about that? I'm not going to do it. No siree. I did not mean to spend this much time on it, but it just aggravates me that this corporatese and rebranding to try to, I'm hip and cool with the millennials and the Zoomers out there, and we're gonna make our brand so the Generation Z connects with us. They're not connecting with you because they don't even have checking accounts yet. All right, we'll move on. We will. I need to talk about Chip Roy. Chip Roy has been on this program. Chip Roy is a longtime dear friend of mine. He is a congressman who represents the district between San Antonio, Texas, and Austin, Texas. And he has managed to... wow. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a job opening here at the Erick Erickson Show. Yet again, I have had to fire my producer, who just tweeted to me after my tirade, "Okay, boomer." The problem is that my former producer, feels the same way. He just doesn't have the platform to be able to say these sorts of things. 9 times out of 10, though I may go on a tirade about something, he does a similar thing, but his is much more profane. It is the reason you will never hear his voice down the microphone is because he couldn't get through something like that without uttering certain profane words that would offend the audience and get me fined by the FCC. But he knows in every fiber of his being that I'm right. Boomer. Now, we will go to Chip Roy. The charges against the president are shaky, according to Chip Roy. This is the subtitle. So why not let the voters make the call? Chip Roy is notable in that he's participated in the hearings behind the scenes. He has been in the depositions. He has seen them. He has not come public. He has kept his mouth shut on impeachment the whole way through. He has been concerned about the allegations and what the president did. And he hadn't said anything. He hasn't been one of the people to rush to the microphone and get in the limelight. And now he's come forward. Let me read you some of what he wrote. The Democrats have filed articles of impeachment. No one is surprised because impeachment has been the goal for the radical left and others who dislike the president since before his election. Impeachment of a president is a solemn undertaking. It will inevitably, as Alexander Hamilton noted in Federalist number 65, veer toward political factions. Yet it is important that our founders intentionally did not embrace recalls or votes of no confidence. Rather, our system demands from Congress evidence of high crimes and misdemeanors and contemplates a level of behavior commensurate with the chaos inflicted on the republic by potential removal of a president. By its very structure, it suggests a judicious exercise of that constitutional safeguard when the people have a clear opportunity to render their own judgment in less than a year. To determine the facts, I have largely sought to avoid the media circus while taking part in depositions, reading reports, and observing public hearings. As a former prosecutor and as a member of the House Oversight Committee, I believe it important to review the facts and then render judgment. The most important evidence presented is the July 25 call between Presidents Trump and Zelensky, which the White House voluntarily released. I am sympathetic to those who reasonably believe the call was not perfect. But I also do not see evidence sufficient to impeach a president of the United States. My specific thoughts are as follows. Regarding the call, it was foreseeable that mentioning a potential political opponent on a call with a foreign head of state would, at a minimum, give the appearance of mixing domestic politics with foreign policy. This is particularly likely when there are people within the bureaucracy who want to find malfeasance, whether it exists or not. I also do not believe so much effort should be spent advancing the argument that there was no quid pro quo. It's legally debatable, but it's difficult to argue there wasn't a this for that desired outcome based on the totality of the phone call and the testimony. But conversations of this kind occur often between heads of state, and provided that they are related to the interests of the United States, they are generally speaking legitimate. It is important to stipulate the relatively clear facts. A meeting and a portion of foreign aid were in fact withheld. In the case of aid, it was withheld for 2 months and apparently with the knowledge of at least some in the White House. The president clearly wanted President Zelensky to act both in the form of investigations and, it appears, by way of some public statements, ostensibly to demonstrate that Zelensky would be different from past Ukrainian leaders in combating the country's epidemic corruption. It also appears that President Trump wanted Ukraine's assistance in looking into the origins of the Trump-Russia investigation, which the Justice Department had been conducting, and into activities involving Ukraine and the Bidens vis-a-vis Burisma. So were these high crimes and misdemeanors? First, the president deserves and is given under the Constitution a great deal of latitude to conduct foreign policy, which includes tough negotiations. In the case of Ukraine, it is clear that President Trump wants Europe to carry more of the burden of supporting their effort, and that he views both a long-standing history of corruption and Ukraine's nexus to our 2016 elections as a problem. He's most certainly within his right to believe these things and act on them. Indeed, federal law requires he act to stop corruption if American foreign aid is being distributed. The history of corruption is readily agreed by all, but central to the issue at hand is whether there's evidence that Ukraine worked with Democrats to influence our 2016 election. While my Democrat colleagues in the media counter that this allegation has been debunked, in doing so they make two errors. One, they suggest that because Russia is rightly regarded to have purposely targeted our elections, this means Ukraine did not. Of course, these are not mutually exclusive, and both have meddled in various degrees. They also purposefully obfuscate the obvious evidence, as acknowledged under oath by one of the Democrats' most celebrated witnesses, Dr. Fiona Hill, that there were troubling efforts by Ukrainians to influence the 2016 election. They do this by conflating it with the less likely technical interferences like CrowdStrike. To be certain, the president's continued personal promotion of that angle perpetuates that questionable narrative, but that's not the core issue. The truth is that we saw Ukrainian leaders publicly attack candidate Trump in the press. We saw some make open efforts to promote Hillary Clinton and actually work with the DNC to dig up dirt on Trump. Further, though later overruled, even a Ukrainian court once found that a Ukrainian parliamentarian and head of anti-corruption police interfered in the 2016 U.S. election. But what matters is that all these things raise legitimate questions of Ukrainian engagement in 2016 and thus provide the president reasonable questions to raise with a new reformed Ukrainian president. Second, investigating the Bidens was never about digging up dirt, as both Biden's public actions raised legitimate questions regarding self-dealings. The elder Biden threatened $1 billion in aid to Ukraine as part of an effort to reject the prosecutor general who was looking into Burisma. Whether or not Biden's effort was independently defensible, his actions regarding Burisma are not immune from scrutiny just because he's a candidate for president. Even the Obama administration raised concerns about likely conflicts of interest involving the Bidens. It's also noteworthy that not one witness has yet provided direct evidence the president targeted Biden or his son specifically for 2020. Arguably, the call could have been word for word the same even if Biden was not running for president, and if the name Biden had not been mentioned, the president's comments would have been unremarkable. But for those remaining on the fence, I would not dismiss the larger context. Zelensky himself denies feeling pressured. The delay in funding was a fraction of the total that lasted for barely 3 months, and there's no evidence the delay was actively communicated to Ukraine, certainly not in a way to apply pressure. Furthermore, there was reason to ask Ukraine to investigate potential meddling in 2016. Therefore, I will continue to examine any evidence offered in an apparent final days of this partisan impeachment exercise, but House Democrats have utterly failed to provide compelling evidence of a high crime or misdemeanor. Once this process is completed in the House, we should immediately turn our attention to solving any one of the significant issues that Americans care most about: reducing healthcare prices, securing the border, balancing the budget, passing free trade, or providing a clear mission for our military. These are the things I hear Texans talking about every day. Whether you agree with this analysis or not, one thing is clearly true: Americans will have the opportunity to make their choice in just over 10 months. We should let them. That is my friend Chip Roy, a member of Congress, and he lays this out, I think, better than anyone in the media, and he's right. He provides copious links in the article. I will put this out on my Twitter feed, twitter.com/EW Erickson. I think this is the one thing today that everyone should be reading on the internet. He's right. The problem here is this: the Democrats have made this an entirely partisan affair. Entirely partisan. And if you don't believe me on that, I want to challenge you with a couple of facts that the media has simply ignored when we come back.
I really do like his opinion on things.
Erick Erickson, the information you need and the truth you demand.
It is Erick Erickson here, the Erick Erickson Show across the state of Georgia. The phone number 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425 is the phone number. And I have put up at theresurgent.com, the piece from Chip Roy, the link to it at National Review, where he posted it. Very well done, very well articulated, and it really is the one thing you need to read today. Chick-fil-A back under attack. Y'all, listen. Apparently, Chick-fil-A, so Covenant House is a nonprofit that works on fighting homelessness around the country. And it does so regardless of race, gender, sexual orientation, whether someone identifies as male. They want to help homelessness. They are a progressive organization. They are. There have been accusations that they drove someone to an abortion clinic to get an abortion. Accusations. And they had a scandal in the past. Lately they haven't, but now the Federalist is attacking them for sponsoring a group that did a drag queen story hour. Listen. Are you going to stop eating at Chick-fil-A? I'm not. They're a corporation. I'm bothered that Chick-fil-A has benefited in the past from solidarity with people of faith who defended the organization for maintaining biblical orthodoxy and supporting Christian groups. I'm not going to stop eating at Chick-fil-A. I don't do boycotts. Rarely, I shouldn't say I don't do it. Rarely do I just flat out say publicly I'm not going to shop somewhere. There are places I don't particularly go, but don't really try to organize boycotts. I'm not going to boycott Chick-fil-A. They've got great food and they're good people. I am told that one of the reasons Chick-fil-A has done this is a prominent person who has been known to disrupt Christian churches in Georgia is partnered with someone who now is a Chick-fil-A franchise owner and has been making all sorts of noise internally. I am told that is the case. I don't know. I'm told fairly reliably that's the case, though. But Chick-fil-A can give its money to who it wants. I think they handled the Salvation Army thing badly, and they needed to be poked and prodded for that. But do you know how many organizations on a daily basis you buy from that support reliably left-wing causes? I've got a vehicle from GM. GM used to advertise on conservative radio, but stopped advertising on conservative radio as GM's advertising agencies and heads went reliably progressive. GM has certainly given to progressive causes and doesn't particularly like conservative or Christian causes, but I'm not going to boycott GM. I like my Yukon. And I seen you have to actively choose to be perpetually outraged. And on the left these days, there actually literally is, and I mean literally as in literally, there is literally an app you can get for your phone that when you go to the grocery store, you can scan the UPC label on the back of a product and determine whether the maker of that product should be boycotted or not based on what they give in support, based on who they give to and what they support. I don't have enough time in the day. Who does that? You can determine, no, you should not go eat at this place. You should go eat at this place because this place is Christian and the other place gives to Planned Parenthood. Go support the place that gives to Planned. I don't have enough time in the day to worry about that. If I'm going out with my family, I just want to go to a restaurant, preferably local, not a chain. Support the local community businesses. I don't know who has the time in the day to worry about stuff like that. You know who does? Zealots of a religion. Secularism has become a religion. I'm not gonna give up on Chick-fil-A. I think the family that owns Chick-fil-A is a good family with good people, and there's just no point in being overly outraged at stuff like this. Chick-fil-A is also a corporation, and maybe one day they want to go public, and that'll be the death of the company, I'm sure, when they go public. But I just don't care. And I'm spending this much time on a story that I don't really care about at this point because you shouldn't care either. I care that so many of you are hacked off about this. And yeah, I get it. The way they handled Fellowship of Christian Athletes and the Salvation Army, yeah, I get that people feel a little betrayed, particularly those who, when Mike Huckabee said, let's all go support Chick-fil-A, you sat in line for an hour to go get your chicken sandwich just to show the company that you had their back. And they clearly don't have your back. I get that. I do. And I don't want to diminish that. But in the words of Elsa, let it go. It's been a while. Now, Mitch McConnell is changing his game plan on impeachment. He now wants to see if he can get an acquittal, not just dismiss impeachment. And he's beginning to advise the Republican majority in the Senate that they should not have a dragged out trial with witnesses. Why? You see, a lot of Republicans have thought, we should drag this out and make it painful on the Democrats. 5 of them, now that Harris has dropped out, 5 Senate Democrats are still running for president. Warren, Sanders, Klobuchar, Booker, and Bennett. Now, I realize none of you realize Michael Bennett, the senator from Colorado, is running for president, but he is. 5 of them are running for president. And Republicans in the Senate have thought, wouldn't it be funny if we dragged this trial out so that they had to miss Iowa, South Carolina, and Nevada? Mitch McConnell thought it was a great idea at first, and he's now kind of gone wobbly on this because of the issue of witnesses.
15.
And we should probably explore the issue on the witnesses and why McConnell's changing strategy when we come back and get into the Horowitz report.